Their feedback is just now. Okay. Roll call, please.
Mayor Rogan, Mayor Pro Tem Farrell,
Present.
Trustee Elson,
Present.
Trustee Dottie,
Present.
Trustee Edding,
Present.
Trustee Delman,
Present.
and Trustee Williams.
We'll stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Congratulations to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll read the land acknowledgement. We must acknowledge with respect as non-native people that the land on which we stand, live, and learn is the traditional territory of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho peoples. We also recognize the 48 contemporary tribal nations that are historically tied to the lands that make up the state of Colorado. Now we'll have a moment of silence. Thank you. Here, yep. Is there approval for the agenda tonight?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Right. Favor?
That motion passes unanimously.
Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak for audience business? Please. We do have one.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lee Williams. I live at 600 Indian Lookout Road, working on a project at 317 Evans Street, as I think most of you know. But I'd give you a 2-minute status report as we make the pivot from construction to getting people into these homes. We're a little bit past the September target that we all talked about last December and January, but I think though I'll spare you the reasons for that, it still feels pretty good to have completed it 9 months after we put shovel to dirt and about 18 months after the idea first occurred to any of us a couple of summers ago. We now have most of the major work done. The buildings are in, the garage is in, the sidewalks, most of the site work. We have some small things that we're still responsible for. We have to put in curb stops and some exterior lighting. We have some painting. We'll have some cleanup to do. Most of those things I think will happen over just the next several days. We have a couple of dependencies still, a little bit on electrical. We expect to get water connected tomorrow. We'll work on the alley a little bit over the next couple of weeks. As long as all of those things happen, we'll be able to turn the corner toward thinking about bringing people in. The one thing that will be left until the spring is some landscaping. It's not the time of year, obviously, to put in trees and some other things, so that'll happen in the spring. As we start to think about getting people in, we've now spoken with all of the people who lived on the property before we started. We have several of those people coming back. Not sure exactly how many. My best guess is still about 4 households coming back. They'll be coming back at about 15% below the 60% AMI threshold that we promised you. We'll work the list of about 50 people who are interested in other units.
Wow.
And we'll also put out a couple of ads so that people who hadn't heard about it will also get a shot. So it's a lot of people for just a few more units. Those people will be coming in at about 20% below the 100% AMI promise that I made you. All of that, if we get our work done and those dependencies get resolved, we'll get people starting to move in around March 1st.
Oh, wow.
And we would expect to get everyone in over the course of, Aaron knows what all those dependencies are, the ones that are on our shoulders and that are on everybody else's shoulders. So maybe it happens March 1st, or maybe it happens sometime in March, but we very likely will get everybody into all of the units, or at least have the opportunity to move if they're ready to move by the end of March. So with that said, I just want to take a second to thank Victoria and Aaron and everybody throughout the town who's helped with the project, who has lived with the project, who survived the project. Aaron especially has put an enormous amount of attention to this. There have been times when we got more attention than we wanted from Aaron, but there have never been times when we got less attention than we needed. He's always been there in spite of other things that he has to do every day. He's dealt with the drumbeat of things on our property, and we appreciate it.
Thank you.
So thanks, Aaron. Thanks, everyone.
And I forgot to ask you to state your name and address for the record, please.
I think I did.
Did you? Okay. I didn't say it out loud, so I wasn't positive. Great, I'm glad you did. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Lynn.
Is there anybody online?
I don't see any.
No? Anybody else? All right, and we're gonna move on to the next, and that would be staff reports, please.
Hello, good evening. I just wanted to brought some of our deputies have been wanting to come to these. So Jeff Yates is our day shift deputy on front side, so Sundays through every other Wednesday, and then Trevor Schimmel's night shift Sundays through, or every other Saturday through Tuesday night. So
Welcome.
Welcome.
good faces here. The graffiti from last year, so finally kind of wrapping that case up. Talked to one of the kids involved finally, and he was honest in owning what he did. Based on the pattern and everything they did on that one, it's not consistent with the other cases I thought was based on, I thought they were responsible for another one that happened that weekend. So chatted with him, and I think they're a good candidate for restorative justice. I just wanted to get the board's opinion on that. It cost the town just that one they did, about $350. So, so we need to follow up with, still trying to get a hold of the other kid who was involved, but he didn't do anything. He was just a lookout. You just need to chat with him and his parents. So trying to schedule that, but that should be wrapped up. And really the big thing is he just wanted to stop, which, you know, it slowed down quite a bit. So that's good. And then just last Friday morning, we had Zen Golds. They're off burglarized in the middle of the or early morning. So I mean, I know that's close to home, but it's not in town, but that's close enough. So we'll just be doing actual patrols throughout the evenings and mornings at the ones in town and that one as well. So got some pretty good leads on that. We'll see. Texas are working that now. So and then just for some stats, it's our calls actually went down so far this in February, about 36 less than this time last year. Year-to-date calls in town 334, which is up 27 from last year at this time, which is just extra patrols and traffic stops like usual. Tickets are up 13 from this time last year and up 22 from all of this year from last year. Traffic accidents are up a bit. We had 2 so far in February with a total of 6 this year, which this time last year we only had 2, but they're just minor, backing into someone's car or nothing too significant. 1 DUI in town. And then just with Flock, hits are down. I know we only have 1 camera, but we only had 6 plate hits this month so far, which 5 of those are sex offenders and 1's a stolen plate. Which that plate is on the right vehicle. It's just the front plate was stolen. So just, so that's good. Last year in February, all of February, we had 24 overall, which I know we had the 2 cameras up then, but, and then I had a pretty long meeting last week with Block and just confirming the locations, and they're starting on permits and stuff like that. So hopefully, fingers crossed, in the next few months, we'll have the cameras all up. And then this last weekend was the busiest so far. We had 7,500 people come into town, which wasn't it pretty snowy? No, this was just last weekend. So week before, yeah, which it snowed Saturday, but we had 7,500 people come through. So it's the busiest month so far.
For the winter, especially.
Yeah. So we're trying to enforce traffic. People are still flying through town. So it's and all around in general, people are, I don't know what it is right now, but people are going really fast and we have a lot of bad accidents. So just a reminder for people to Speed limits are there for a reason, so especially in town with lots of foot traffic and, kids and bikes and dogs and stuff, so. That is all I have.
Okay. Any questions?
Actually,
Please.
so I can say that it is noticed that there's more patrols, because my daughter goes to high school and they're all complaining. So, and second plug, restorative justice, I think it's fantastic. So I have some experience. with it.
Yeah, I did,
It's good, it's a great one.
I was, years ago, I was a victim in my job, but, with a kid and, we put it through restorative justice and it's good. And he's a good kid, he got a good family and, he's very talented. Like, that's why I knew he's not responsible for all the other ones, because the stuff he did was actually really good compared to the other stuff. So he took full ownership and I think he'll be good. I just gotta talk to the other kid, but even if the other kid doesn't want to participate, then he can just get to do it, so.
Maybe we can include him in the Arts and Humanities Commission somehow and put some good positive use to.
Well, I know we had brought up, I think last year we kind of talked about a graffiti wall, which I think a lot of places have them, and I think that would be great, just.
Maybe even a utility box.
Right, right.
So,
Good valid one.
something we can work on.
Great.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
No problem, have a good night.
You too. It's nice to meet you all.
Yeah.
Thank you for the work you're doing.
You want to?
Very happy to be here.
Good.
Let me just give you some updates.
Okay. Administrator's report.
Thank you. I have several items on the administrator's report. The first was kind of a debrief on the Eagle Canyon water main break. I do want to check in with the board to see if you have any follow-up questions or concerns regarding that. Again, I think, I want to thank Aaron and the staff for dealing with that issue. As you know, such an emergency and trying to locate where the break was at. That's what's the hardest part. And thankfully a homeowner called in and saw it, and then we were able to address it. But as you guys know, it's probably the longest break we've had since the flood. And so the neighborhood was very cooperative, and we did what we could to try to accommodate them. But I didn't know if there was any questions any of you had or comments that you wanted to make sure we got. Okay. All right. Well, there is a debrief in the report if you want to read that in detail. We do want to let the board know that we had applied for a strategic fuels mitigation grant. It was through Boulder County to update the community wildfire protection plan. It's called the CWPP. Ours is over 10 years old, and to be able to get some of this wildfire funding out there right now, your CWPP has to be up to date. Now, this is a document the fire district does, so it's out of kind of our control. So we met with the fire department, strategized, and Kim took the lead on applying for it with one of their staff. We were awarded $50,000. It's $100,000 project. It's kind of like updating the comprehensive plan, but it's about, you know, the wildfire situation. We specifically said we wanted our town limits updated. So we were notified that we got a $50,000 grant that will be coming before you for formal approval, but it is a $25,000 match from the town and $25,000 from the fire district. And we had 40,000 set aside that we did not use, so we're hoping to use that as our match, but we'll be bringing that forward. So that will update the plan. Then we will have plans for each neighborhood, all of those things in writing. And then we can start applying for some of these federal grants. If you've been down Broadway today, they started striping. They think they'll be there through Thursday. And then they will be finishing up that project for about a 4 to 6 week period. Same situation that Lee's facing over on Evans Street. You can't really do, it's a little too early for landscaping. And so they will be back. As soon as planting season allows for that, we're thinking 1st of April, they'll be back to finish up landscaping and any signage that needs to happen. But this week, they will be removing all of the traffic controls, and we'll have the lane striped so people can start using it. So it's pretty exciting to see how that's going to go before traffic is really heavy. But
but it does look real barren right now, so they'll be back to do landscaping. There was a big write-up also on Old Man Winter Bike Rally, amazing event. Kim put a couple links in here for you to follow up. Great PR for the community, great time for the visitors. How many people, Kim? 2,000?
2,000 participants and almost 1,000 spectators.
Yeah, so
Wow.
3,000 people participating and no issues noted. Yes. Martin parcel controlled burn. We've all been waiting for this controlled burn based on snow or rain events. Well, today, Aaron and Dave went out on site with the fire district and Left Hand Fire, and they've now decided they don't feel a controlled burn is the right solution that close to town. So we're going to get some bids for other options such as chipping or hauling all of it away. Apparently the two districts hadn't communicated very well, and so now they're saying they're not going to do a controlled burn. So hang tight. We will be coming forward with another solution here soon. The annual report, I know this is always a important milestone for some folks, is now out there live on our website. There's copies available at the library. There's one here, and Redstone's advertising its availability. And so we just want to let folks know that's out there. I put a link in the report as well. The next item I wanted to cover is there's also some funding available through DOLA called the Local Planning Capacity Grant. There is some interest in some of the mountain communities in putting together a feasibility study if it's worth having a separate housing authority for our small mountain communities. And so it'd be called the Peak to Peak Housing Authority, and it would be us and Netherland and a couple little small communities in Gilpin. And this study would say whether or not there's enough need, how could we share those staff, that kind of a thing, to put together a housing authority that really focuses on our needs compared to some of the urban needs that we're always seeing in these other housing authorities. So this is another one that unless you feel strongly otherwise, staff would like to write a letter of support that we would like to join in on just the feasibility. And I don't believe there's any financial match. That sound reasonable? And then you all know that we joined a brownfields group last year with Longmont, Firestone, and Cortez of the Bloom. They are now ready to start spending some money in each of those communities. So they have conducted a brownfield assessment of Lyons. The study is like 400 pages long, and it's a brownfield can be anything from not only gasoline sites and things like that, but can also just be asbestos, lead paint. It's a whole myriad of issues. So they are now to the point that they are ready for us to, they want us to identify 20 to 30 properties we think would participate in a free assessment. And there's no condition of following through with remediation. It's really awareness for your resellability and your own health issues. And they're ready to host that. And so Andrew and I, Planner Bone and I, will be taking the lead on this, going through that list, looking at those that appear to be the most serious and that we think would have owners that would participate. And they'd like to have a meeting with them and then start this assessment process. Then after that assessment, there's a separate process to go to if they want to apply for remediation funds, but they're not required to. So as you guys know, one of those assessment sites is this building because it used to be the electric distribution for the community for 30 some years. Diesel engine sat in our front offices and ran nonstop. They would like to do one here. And then the other half of this building was a fire station. So they would like to also just kind of do a remediation or an assessment of the site. So we will be one of those 30 participants. And then, lastly, for me, there was a request to give an update on safe routes to schools. And what was kind of the timing on that based on our sidewalk, our network, pedestrian network plan being completed. So the next round of grant applications for safe routes is not until August of this year. They'll open in August and they'll be due in October. They are expecting it to be very competitive. Projects are going to be awarded early of 2025. And they are hoping to have projects that can be completed as soon as they're awarded. And there will be a 20% match to those funds. So we should keep that in mind as we're talking about our sidewalks. Can we wait that long? Is there something more we want to do? But we definitely have a 20% match set aside if you choose to hang on and apply for this next round. And then, I think there's other items in my report, but those are some highlights. I want to make sure I hit. Is there any other questions?
The big hole on Fourth and Main.
That's my question.
Oh,
Or then
What's-
big
hole.
402, yes.
is that our new swimming pool or is that?
I think that should be.
We have heard that. We have heard that. We do have an update from the owner. I'm just gonna pull that up real quick. Aaron, you have that open by
I
chance?
know what it said, that they were still looking to determine, they want to determine if it's valuable to keep the structure of the basement before they fill that in. So they're waiting to get, engineering reviews on that to determine how best to move forward. If they should try to remove it all and then put in what's needed to retain so that the parking lot to the north doesn't come down and other things. So they're still having that reviewed.
They said they're, working on bids for both. Making keeping the basement and making it structurally sound or just backfilling it.
But so even if they kept the basement, they would still fill it?
Well, they'd have to probably put in, beams across. They
Okay.
want to do something. They've already stabilized it, if you see.
Yeah, I
there's
saw
some
Yeah.
needs. But to do it long term, they would want to actually put in a structure that would close it in and not leave it as an open basement, but keep it as a basement to be used in the future, from what I had read in the email. Otherwise, they would pull it and fill it.
There is,
Sounds good.
oh, sorry.
Well, I was gonna ask a follow-up to that then, is if they choose to keep the basement, they're gonna cover it, so then the fence would still come down and it would be a safe, open lot.
I'm not so sure about that anymore. If
Okay.
they choose to keep the basement, I can't imagine they would fill it.
Or cover
But
it
they
in
would
such a
cover, yes,
way.
the email, they did want to cover it. They understand they can't let it fill with water all the time. So they would do something. I don't know that it would be stabilized to necessarily allow people to walk on it with the covering. I don't know much about the covering idea. That was newer and we haven't heard details.
Okay,
But as piggyback to that, there's another grant that, Kim and I have located that is also, it's a USDA grant similar to the one that LEAP is asking for us to support this round. So we would be competing projects. That would be, it's specific to rural communities and economic development. They would actually purchase a couple of prefab containers that the owners of this parcel have said if they choose to fill it, they would let us place those there for small businesses over the summer, so it's not a bare lot. And then we could have maybe, however they choose, you could lease it to someone who doesn't need much space, so it'd be much cheaper than that front. You could have a youth booth like we did at all of the artisan markets. That was very popular. But the grant would be to get a couple containers that are already outfitted for like a storefront. And then when they sell the building or come up with their plans, or if it takes as long as we see construction is taking, we can then move them. And you can use them anywhere. They don't have a problem with that. So if we wanted to move one to Bone Park and become a concession stand, we could do that. Or if we wanted to move it elsewhere as a temporary building, we can do that. So that's something else that Paul and Renee have said they're very interested in if they fill it. So that's just a piggyback on that. We're trying to get in front of what that's gonna be like, so it's not sitting empty very long.
Go ahead. I have a question that's not directly related to your annual report, but it came to my attention by a resident today. And because we just spoke about the sidewalk assessment plan last week, and I saw that they were also taking inventory of any ADA accessible curbs. The question came up around, handicap parking places in town and whether there is some sort of law or bylaw to follow around how many are provided, because I think they're finding it difficult to find them.
Justin is on the call and he was involved with that, right? Or was it?
Study?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know if the study has anything
Right.
on that.
I don't think so.
He's on. Justin, do you have any follow-up to the study and its reference to ADA requirements for parking?
This kind of came up 6 months ago or something. Previously, when I spoke to CDOT, where the highway is not associated with a building or facility, there's not really ADA parking requirements like there is if you build a new shopping center where you must have X number of parking stalls, per square footage or per number of residents or per customers or something like that. Highways really don't have, since they're not tied to a building or something or a sporting like a event center or anything, they don't have those requirements.
So then I guess to follow up with that question, for example, all the new parking spaces along 36, that would be considered part of CDOT's highway system. So there wouldn't be any designated parking, is that right?
Justin, can you answer that one?
Correct. Those are all parallel and there's not enough room to accommodate an ADA parallel stall in that right of way.
And more specifically with regards to access to the library, any of that easement, that sidewalk access and the steps leading up to the library, is that town responsibility or is that library responsibility? Where does that responsibility lay with the access?
I would have to look at that specifically. It seems to me when we did their plan, there should have been. There's not an ADA ramp near where they have their EV charger.
There are no banisters, apparently there are no like railings to go up the steps.
Oh, I think they.
And I think
learned
the
their
handicap
plan.
parking is in front of the depot as opposed to near the library. It's far, I don't know, Sergeant, seriously, you see where that is, right? It's just, it's difficult to, I think this handicapped resident was concerned about accessing the library
Okay,
and whose responsibility that was.
I'm
And
happy to look into that, and if you want to share that, I can follow up with them.
That would be great.
Yeah, if you want to give me some information, I can certainly look into it.
I get the feeling there is a group of people who are concerned with handicap access who will be at the candidates forum
Okay.
with these questions. So
Okay.
just
Mhm.
heads up.
Anybody else?
Sorry,
No, go ahead.
I just wanted to follow up. There is plans to put railing on those stairs, but it's in the landscaper scope of work for the 36 contract, so that's why it's just coming in a little late.
Oh, wait a minute, 36.
Yeah.
Where on Broadway?
Sorry, I thought we were referring to those stairs between the depot and the library that just got built.
No, I don't think so. You're talking about the stairs to the front door of the library, different stairs, but
He's talking about one from the parallel parking that will come behind the library.
Broadway down.
There's a set of stairs there too,
Oh, good.
but we'll have one.
Okay,
Yeah.
as long as there are railings so that people.
I thought I'd heard the library was planning to put those in, but I'll follow up.
That would be great.
No problem.
We're gonna put a skateboard jump. You can slide down the railing.
I think for people who have a cane, it's important for them to be able to hold on to
Of
something,
course.
right?
Yep. Okay. Happy to follow up.
Any more
Thank you.
questions? I actually want to respond to something and I'm about going back to the grant that you were describing, that perhaps the containers for 402 Main. Will there be, I'm a little concerned about applying for a grant for something that we don't necessarily have a plan for actual use.
Well, by the time we apply, we will.
Okay,
But that was kind of the temporary plan because we were looking at what are some uses on that parcel, right?
sure.
So that, because he had offered that if we wanted to use it for a farmer's market, or we, you know, he was welcome to let the community use it if it was filled in.
Okay.
And so we were brainstorming uses, and that was one that came up. We would definitely have to work out, I think that's due at the end of March. We have a little time, so we'll work on that. And where they could be stored when they're not being used. There's some really creative ideas there. You know, worst case scenario would be stored at the Public Works building probably.
Okay, okay. All right, we'll move on to the
They
next.
wouldn't be the giant 40-foot, we'd probably just go 20 feet to make them a little more movable locally.
So something similar to kind of what A Lodge actually has.
Yeah.
In theirs, it's not very large.
With an open window.
With it, yeah. All right, is there are we doing anything on the finance update, or it's just having it in the packet?
Oh, no, it's there, and Cassie's here.
Hi.
Hi, everybody. How are you?
Just peachy.
Did you want me to present the whole thing, or just give you some highlights?
How about some highlights would be great, and then if
Yeah.
somebody has a question, we can go there.
That sounds great. So what is in the packet tonight is a preliminary update through the end of 2023. It's not all the complete 2023 numbers because we still have some invoices that are trickling in. You do have some in the packet to approve under the AP consent agenda item. And then we had a couple trickle in today. So these numbers are definitely preliminary and subject to change. But one of the things that we were able to button up is the year look for sales tax. Unfortunately, we did see receipts down compared to the whole year of 2022, 2%, which is about $36,000. It definitely could have been a lot worse. We've seen communities and heard of communities that had a little bit worse than us. But I will say one of the things that kind of cushioned that a little bit was the increase in the local marijuana tax that we did earlier in the year. So that definitely helped cushion that deficit. Revenue was definitely not down overall as the year because we had many additional items. One of them specifically is interest income that came in just, phenomenal last year. So that's definitely good. For the most part, revenues were higher than expected with the general fund and the parks fund, and revenues were down lower than budgeted. So what that means is we're going to have a carryover into 2024. Right now, just speaking about the general fund, it's going to look probably at the minimum $450,000. So that's a good carryover for us that we can utilize for additional projects, shortfalls, grant matches, or carry over into the next budget season as well. I think those are kind of the highlights. We will have some rollovers from 2023 into 2024. I'm working with staff to identify those, but some of the larger ones will be like the solar project, potentially stormwater grant matches, wildfire, that type of stuff. So we'll bring those forward in a future budget amendment. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, do we have a legal update? Attorney Dittman?
Good evening, Board of Trustees, Mayor Pro Tem Farrell. No real legal update this time. Pretty quiet on what we're doing for the town in terms of litigation. Thankfully, we don't have that right now. Very busy legislative session at the moment. So that's obviously we're spending a lot of time for CAMU and CCWA on that. Nothing of substance to report yet. We're just trying to, things aren't far enough along where there's real changes happening and on those side of things. But we'll of course keep you updated if anything does come across that requires immediate attention.
Any questions for Attorney Dittman? All right. All right, so next on the agenda is ordinances and public hearing. Clerk Vasquez, would you read that in, please?
Absolutely. This is the second reading of public hearing on ordinance 1157, an ordinance of the town of Lyons, Colorado, approving the lease agreement with Raul Vasquez and Bobby Joe Vasquez for property located adjacent to 4168, 4170, and the western half of 4196 Youth Highway.
Staff report?
Yeah, Tracy,
Okay.
Tracy, do you want me to do the report or do you just want to do questions?
Yes, if you want to do the report and then we can answer any questions if there are any.
Okay. We did have a first reading on this ordinance, so this is the second reading and we'll host a public hearing as well. This would be a 10-year lease agreement with both Raul Vasquez and Bobby Joe Vasquez to lease the property adjacent to, it's 3 separate addresses out on Youth Highway. I think most people are familiar with it. 4168, 4170, and the western half of 4196. So it's the property he has been leasing for many years from the town. This would update the lease to include his agreement for the trail to go through and the agreement to put in a fence that once it's in, he's agreed that he will maintain unless it is damaged by the public. And also adjust his lease rate to be the same as what you recently approved for Spirit Hounds, which was basically 15 cents per square foot. And so I think that is most of the changes to it, but it would be an updated lease with language, terms, and lease length of 10 years.
All right, any questions for staff? Is the applicant here?
It's not.
Okay. All right. So may I have anyone from the public would like to speak to this?
You have to open a public hearing.
Oh. Is there a motion to open? Is that right?
No, just open.
Just, okay.
You're good. It's like the public hearing is now open, and then is there anybody out there who would like to speak to this item?
Exactly. Anyone? Bueller? Okay. We'll
Ask
close
online one more time.
online one more time. Okay, we'll close the public hearing. And is there a motion?
Sure. A motion.
Yeah, go ahead.
I move to approve ordinance 1157, an ordinance of the town of Lyons, Colorado, approving a lease agreement with Raul Vasquez and Bobby Joe Vasquez for property located adjacent to 4168, 4170, and the western half of 4196 Youth Highway.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, any discussion? None at all? All right, I'll call for the vote.
That motion passes unanimously.
Fantastic. All right, can we have consent agenda read, please?
Yes, item 1 is resolution 2024-16, a resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, accepting the town of Lyons pedestrian network plan conducted by Consort Engineering. Item 2 is resolution 2024-17, a resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, approving the second amendment to the professional services agreement with Roxall Consulting Group Incorporated for the US 36 Broadway Improvements and Multimodal Trail Project. Item 3 is resolution 2024-18, a resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, approving the subscription of all of the town of Lyons annual electricity consumption from the Municipal Energy Agency of Nebraska to their green energy program. Item 4 is resolution 2024-19, a resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, approving a contract amendment with the United States Department of Energy, Western Area Power Administration, Rocky Mountain Region, Loveland Area Projects for firm electric service. Item 5 is resolution 2024-20, the resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, approving the software as a service agreement with Cassell Incorporated to provide cloud-based enterprise resource planning software for the town of Lyons. Item 6 are the February 5th, 2024 regular Board of Trustees meeting minutes, and item 7 are the February accounts payable.
All right, would anybody like to pull something from consent?
I'd like to pull item 3, please.
Okay. So then what we do is we approve.
Need a motion?
Okay, may I have a motion to approve the rest of the consent agenda?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Okay, and we'll vote.
And that motion passes unanimously.
Okay, would you like to read?
No, I was just gonna make a comment. I was hoping that the moving to 100% green energy might have had a little bit more celebration.
Yeah.
Fanfare. I didn't know it was gonna be on the consent agenda. I just think it's a fantastic thing. I mean, we know that, you know, there's still a lot of progress to be made, but it's good stuff for the town, and I'm just happy that we're doing it. I just wish more people were more excited.
Mhm.
Anybody more excited?
We're excited.
Okay, I'm good.
We've been on the list for a couple years, and so it is exciting to finally get to 100% of our energy being green. And maybe we can tell the public a little more detail about that. But it comes from a very mixed portfolio, which is great. I think it's good to have a very diverse portfolio. So why didn't you?
And looking at the cost difference, again, I didn't have a chance today, I got a little out of hand. I wanted to pull up what some of our general consumption was to give an idea, because you can see, again, it's 4 cents per kilowatt. So what, that really doesn't have any so 4.3 cents per kilowatt versus 4.5 cents. So 0.2 cents per kilowatt, but that really depends on how much you use. But I think 500 kilowatts as an average consumption for a home is probably good. I always have a lot of numbers going around, but I think a whole megawatt is quite a bit. I think I was 300 to 400. So again, once you get up to a megawatt, you're talking, or 1,000 kilowatts, you're talking $43 versus $45, $2 per megawatt difference, which could be a couple of months worth of electricity. You're paying a couple of dollars more over a year. $20 more is something, but again, when we're looking at going to green energy, it doesn't seem like a huge increase in cost for that. And this is the town's increasing cost. At this point, this has not been passed on to the public. We are looking at still being able to absorb that based on the budget that was done for 2024 in 2023. There are others, as you will see, other rate increases, different items that may be going up over the year. We'll see how things go throughout the year. I still think we can make it with the budget we have. But like everything, I keep hearing about more expenses every day. So we'll see where we go. We've had a few transformers blow out here, and it just keeps going. And so my $20,000 in transformers may not go as far as I've budgeted to go.
We'll have Kim do some exciting, fun announcements of going 100% green. She loves all that fun.
What green fireworks?
Something.
Oh, green lighting on
Well, at
Main.
least it just.
Oh,
Green lasers.
Green lighting on
Green
Main,
lasers
we can switch the
go.
lighting to green.
Green lasers go.
With St. Patrick's Day.
Good one, I like that.
I like that.
Okay.
And you'll secretly
You'll
know it's
know
for
the green
the
lights.
green, right?
That is a question.
Attorney Littman?
Yeah, so on the average consumption numbers for a Colorado home, that's about 23 kilowatt hours. And so you multiply that times, 0.2 cents. You know, it's
23 kilowatt for what? How often?
per kilowatt hour, 23 per kilowatt hour.
The average home uses 23 kilowatt hours
A day.
a day?
Per day. Yeah.
Really?
711 kilowatt hours per month, according to the DOE.
Again, 1,000 kilowatts is $2.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, if you multiply those numbers out, I mean, it's under 10,000 kilowatt hours, under 10 megawatts per year. So
All right, so I have a motion to approve resolution 2024-18.
For a second.
Second.
Right, another more discussion? That's really exciting. Yeah. All right, so call for vote.
That motion passes unanimously.
Okay, general business. We have a discussion request from LEAF for financial contribution to LEAF for suicide prevention programming.
And there was, and I do see that, Executive Director Lori Barton is online. Lori, if you'd like to join us, she did put a letter in your packet with the request. Lori,
Would you like to make a presentation? If not, I can.
Well, she's still muted.
she may have started rereading or something.
No, we're going. very
We may
fast.
have to go, maybe we can, oh, no.
Why don't we actually, because I think it would probably be really nice to give her a chance.
We could take the next item first if the board's okay with changing. the
Yeah,
agenda.
is that okay?
well, I think with them in the agenda to do that. So
Okay, may I have a motion?
And I'll text her. in the
Okay,
meeting.
that'd be great. So what I'd like then is, I think what we should do is have a motion to adjust the agenda and move resolution 2421 up, please. Okay. So we do vote on that.
Yeah.
All in favor?
I need a second.
Oh, a second?
Oh, who did Eddie?
Second, yeah.
Eddie was
Okay.
the second. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Motion is.
Motion passes unanimously.
There we go. Okay. Would you staff like to make a presentation on this?
Yeah, that's gonna be Tracy.
Okay.
Oh, no, Erin, you're gonna do the overall and she's gonna.
Which, right, do you want to let her start then? On the actual stream bank contract that this is.
That is Tracy's.
I'm happy to talk more in depth on
Tracy, go ahead and present the resolution. Maybe we're having trouble.
Okay, I gotta pull it up here on my very small screen. So, okay,
Or I can go through that too, I wasn't sure.
I got it. Yeah, so this is for a resolution approving a design contract for the stream bank restoration project. We did receive funding from CWCB and Left Hand St. Vrain Water Conservation District to go towards the design of this of the stream bank. We do have a shortfall because the estimate we received from the contracted town engineer was much lower. And we did negotiate the fee down. And this is the fee that they're requesting is $145,000 for the design. And some of the reasons that the design is a little bit high is that there's a few constraints to consider. The environmental assessment, when they did, this is the same design engineer that did the stream bank just north of this same area, just 2-3 years ago. And there was a cultural findings of artifacts in that area. So they do feel that they will need a thorough environmental assessment of that area. And we already know we have Prebbles to consider as well. The other challenges is the steepness of the slope. Trying to do what we call a no rise for our floodplain permit is going to take a few design iterations to meet that no rise. We did meet with them and talk through all these points with them, and there may be some options once we get into design. We might see what options we have to kind of minimize some of these impacts. And then the other thing is that there's an Army Corps permit that's required for being in the stream. So anytime that have equipment or you're doing any changes along the bank, you have to have a permit from the Army Corps for any changes in the stream or even just having equipment there. So the reason why this is a general business item is because we do want to discuss the shortfall of the funding, which is 42,000. So that would be a portion the town we're asking for direction, and maybe staff is suggesting the town put in that portion of the funding. And then we have 102,500 from other funding sources. I did put some pictures in there of the stream bank. They're just a few months old to show that it is eroding away. So we feel like this is a long-term fix, and there has been some discussion on fencing along there, which may provide some temporary temporary safety, keeping public out there. But with the bank eroding from weather and stuff, it's hard to tell how long that would last. And it may last for 50 years, or it may last a couple years. So not sure on that. So that's basically a little bit of background and the request that we're asking for approval of this contract.
Anything else? Did you want to add anything?
Sure. I know there's been some discussion on this and seeing the public outreach on it. I wanted to go back and review again that we did have this on a workshop, and I believe you also tried to put together quite a bit of detail on there. I wanted to emphasize this is at least the fourth, if not the fifth time that there's been discussion of doing this project throughout the past over a year. So, I mean, it's been talked about quite a bit. We came up for the first grant, the second grant. So there has been a lot of discussion on this. Going back even further to the previous boards and to the discussion on the actual bank, during the initial, again, trying to come forward with what staff, or I in particular, had seen over the years from the board's discussion on this and looking at the stream bank now, understanding that it was in the agreement, as was in the workshop, that the parties agreed to cooperate in good faith and use their best efforts to seek to obtain state, federal, and other financial assistance at no cost to the owner, specifically emphasizing the owner would have no cost on that. And again, a lot of this was in discussion and in relationship to a housing project. And for me, regardless of my opinions on a housing project and whether it should go forward or not, I have been tasked to say, okay, this is what we're looking at. So the board at the time thought this housing project should go forward and we need to do what we can. So we did accept this property, I believe, understanding. My interpretation from going through the minutes that were presented were that the Board of Trustees did understand that there would be some mitigation needed on this. The minutes I read had discussion on that, had talk that the actual fence was not enough in those minutes. Again, we're going by minutes. It was a long time ago, but the understanding was, yes, that there was not enough protection just from a fence. And my interpretation was that a fence was temporary and we should be looking at going forward with this. But understanding those concerns was why this had been brought up. Again, from the very start, from the very first time we went to go forward with an actual grant application a year or so ago, and still try to make sure this new board also agreed and wanted to continue to move forward with that.
Is there any question? Go ahead.
So I know you talked about the fence being temporary fence. If they put in a permanent fence, would that change the need for having the mitigation done?
The fence wouldn't change styles based on permanent or temporary type of fence. It would be a determination of, is a fence enough to be a permanent fixture? I was out there during some of the rainstorms we had last spring when we had some heavier rains in a quicker amount of time, and you can see the immediate slough off that happened. They had to move the silt fence back because it fell off in a section of where the bank fell off. So they moved it back a section and reset it. I think they need to reset it again. That's actually in the punch list that was presented, to put the silt fence up again. So how quick, how often it will erode, I don't know, but I've seen it eroding. And so the fence, we could come back 15 feet, how much, or 20 feet? How much time does that buy us? I don't know. Is it, again, there's talk of priorities. We try to look at, again, the engineering side of things and whether or not they thought this should be done. So just trying to take what they've provided to us as, here's what would need to be done to actually mitigate the concerns of this stream bank.
Well, did that answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
So I have a follow-up question, just to understand the long-term goal here. So for example, if we move forward with the stream bank restoration, does that mean that we will no longer need a fence because it will be safe?
Correct.
So that's why we're talking about temporary fencing until this stream bank has been restored.
Well, and you all received emails from a couple previous trustees who feel your only responsibility is a fence. And so that is an option, but as staff is saying, we aren't convinced with watching how much it's been sloughing.
Sure.
Watching what's happening in California. The last thing we want is anyone to go around the fence and get buried by mud, right? So we feel if the board so chooses to pursue this design phase, doesn't mean we're gonna spend this entire amount. As Tracy said, if they can piggyback on ecological from the previous or Preble's habitat, or if they say, we would love, because I would love this, to see that the grove that's already rebuilt itself over the last 10 years doesn't have to change, let's just pull back the rest. Maybe it won't be that expensive, but we don't know. We don't know. And to be able to go any further, you need some form of design. And so it's really up to this board. We can put up just the fence and not do this design, or we do the design to see what it's really gonna take and then pursue funding for the project.
Go ahead. Sorry, two more questions. So A, because this is related to the flood, and maybe you've already answered this question, I don't remember the answer. Are there any funds available still from flood recovery to pay for this? Where is this money coming from? That's what I'm wondering.
We will have to pursue it through, I think Tracy's pursuing what's called the Colorado Water Conservancy Board. Oh, she's on there.
Yeah, I think Cassie can help answer too. So we have funding we have 102,000 in grant funding to go towards the design. We have a shortfall of $42,000. Now, for construction, we're gonna have to go out for more grants for construction, and we have some grants or funding agencies identified that we want to apply to. We can't do that without a partial design. So, but then I think Cassie can answer what we have available in our set aside. And just to be clear, we did do a flood recovery set aside, and it was for any any costs that were deemed ineligible that were flood related, whether it was through FEMA funding or just projects that we couldn't find funding for. And it also is for a potential clawback years down the road, when the OIG comes in and does audits of FEMA, then if they find that FEMA did not appropriately review the expenses for recovery projects, then they will go to the state and they will ask the state to pay that money back. And then the state has the option to come back to the different what they call sub applicants, which would be, for example, the town of Lyons, and ask us to pay back. So that's just one aspect of the intent of the set aside. So just kind of wanted to clarify that a little bit as well, but
So Tracy, just to, thank you for that explanation. So just to clarify, that means that we can't take out of that flood set aside in case of a future audit. Is that what you're saying?
No, because it's for a future audit, but it also was for, right now FEMA's going through and closing projects and reviewing all our expenses, and they may deem some of those ineligible now. So that also is for stuff now, but it also was for any flood related projects that we didn't have any grants for. So it really kind of had an all-purpose, there was a many purposes for setting that money aside. And we were going to keep doing it in perpetuity until we felt like an audit would not be, because after the entire disaster's closed, that means every single sub-applicant has closed and FEMA has closed all their projects. Then the OIG has 3 years from that day to come back and do an audit. So it could be 7-10 years down the road before that happens.
And maybe you or Cassie could tell us exactly how much is in that flood recovery set aside.
Right now, we have about 800,000 at the end of 2023. When we were building the budget, we discussed getting to a goal of $1 million. And in the 2024 budget, we are putting away an additional $50,000. So kind of the way I see it is whether we utilize rollover funds from the general fund, which I mentioned at a minimum is going to be $450,000, or take from the set aside. It's all coming from the general fund. So it's either you deem it rollover funds, or basically we reduce our set aside contribution for this year, which was $50,000. It's kind of one and the same.
Director Idstone, I assume that 800,000 is accruing interest.
Yeah.
And so it should be
all
growing
within our Colo Trust. Yes.
Yeah, so it should be growing at about 40 to 50,000 a year if we can get about 45%.
Yeah, and it's just to clarify, it sits within the town's cash pool. So all of the town's cash, $5-6 million, sits within Colo Trust and is designated, throughout the general fund. So the general fund earns interest on its portion. The water fund earns interest on its portion. So it's not, that interest is not necessarily going to the flood set aside. It is going to the general fund and the parks fund, which is where the flood set aside sits.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay. Did you have questions?
No.
Right. Any questions? I have a question. Could you give us an update on what the status is of the fence? Because we had talked about moving forward with the fence with Summit.
Yes.
It's on their punch list. That one I've not had any specific. They've gotten through about half the items on the punch list. So they are still working through that one. I know last we talked, they did not have, that was not part of a set contract at the time for them. So I know they had to negotiate who was doing the fence and when. I've heard they wanted to try to also be done close to the end of this month, early next month. So believe they're going to be working on that, but I haven't pushed them on any of the specifics with the punch list. They are aware of what that is. Again, they've worked through half of them, so I'm still waiting for that as part of the other half.
Okay. I was also then wondering, so on page 17 of this report, or 267 of the packet, it's the map that was used back in 2020. It's kind of the bank stabilization project map. And it's kind of an aerial of the this particular area. In number 3, it says install boulder cluster to provide fish habitat. And clearly the topography of this landscape has changed significantly from the time that this picture was taken. But I was kind of curious about that. Is that really necessary in something like this? I mean, are we able to look at this and say, things have changed? And that the study really shouldn't reflect what I think is being shown here, but what is really current.
Right.
So,
Either
okay.
one of us, you want? Go ahead. You want to,
Yeah,
Tracy? Arno?
yeah, that's correct. We probably will not be doing any fish habitat or stream work as part of this scope of the project. We did discuss that, and yes, they'll have to assess the current site conditions and what current, because it's changed so much, like you said. And so that's part of what is your design consultant does. They come in and do survey work, they test the soils, they're doing assessment of the, of your vegetation and all that stuff. So yeah, they will take what's out there now. That study is old. We have to update the study to what current conditions are. And doing the fish habitat probably will not be part of the project. I did talk with CPW and they didn't feel, they will be consulted though when we do this, but I don't think they feel it's necessary to do the fish habitat.
Okay.
Right, I think we actually had discussions, the scope of the design was even high, we've already negotiated down the actual cost of this design based on reduction of the scope of the project because of exactly that.
Okay.
We have been talking to the designers to work down to get to this number from where they were at.
Okay. Any more questions? So because this is a resolution, but it's under general business, we're still going to vote on
We have
this.
to vote on it. We just knew that it would need this discussion.
Yep. Okay. Is there a motion?
I move to approve resolution 2024-21 approving an engineering design contract with Anderson Consulting for the design of the stream bank restoration.
I second that motion.
Okay. So discussion, and I would like to hear from everyone. I'm going to start with you.
That's fine. So I think this is a good idea. I think for the safety reasons. I did read in depth the 2 emails we got from Greg Lowell and Mark Brown. Great details, great information. I also feel that the way that the contract is worded, we really can't have Summit responsible for the stream banking. If that was the plan, then I feel the board should approve Greg's motion to have that, because that was in there. The way that's worded now, it says they're not responsible. It says they're willing to work with us. But I also feel with the 2 grants that are out there, we can at least get this portion of it done and see what the final cost will be. I think a fence is not good enough for safety issues because of the drop. So I think we should move forward with it. And to me, it doesn't make a difference if we take the money from the general fund, from the clawback, because we have extra money already from last year. So either way, wherever it's.
It's not even 10% of that, yeah.
Yeah. So whatever works best for us. That's mine. Oh,
Thank you.
Yeah, I actually consider this a flood recovery project. I don't think this has anything to do with Summit Housing. I understand that there was discussion there around the fence. And it doesn't feel like with the erosion that's happening, that any kind of fence is actually going to be able to like maintain some kind of security perimeter. So I feel like the only way to make this secure is to restore that bank. And I am concerned about residents living in near proximity to this. And I am concerned about the timeline and when this is going to happen, because I know when it's summertime and it's nice out and people want to get down to the water, they're going to be scrambling down this bank, which is probably going to make it erode even more. So when I see that we have $800,000 in the flood recovery set aside, and we have $450,000 rolling over from general fund, I feel like $42,638 from the town of Lyons as our participation is doable for safety purposes and also as a flood recovery project.
Yeah.
I appreciate both your comments. I completely agree. I don't have any appetite tonight to hold Summit's feet to the fire. I think they've been raked through the polls enough. Let's just move on. And I also agree, I don't think the fence is a long-term solution by any means. As a matter of fact, I think it's almost like a false solution to the safety issue. So it's painful, $140,000. How much are we paying these civil engineers? What are they making an hour?
They're over $200, some of them, if they're specialty.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a lot, and I don't even want to guess at this time what the cost of actually doing any work will be. But I think we're at our backs against the wall. Let's go ahead and let's get this done.
Before I give my opinion, I'll start, so go ahead.
So I agree as well. I do think that since Summit agreed to put the fence in, that it should be put in. But then if that's not gonna be a real solution, it still has to be restoration on the stream bank. I think we need to approve this and go ahead with it.
I agree with everything that's been said. I would add one additional piece to it. And that is that we are gonna have precious few properties in town where affordable housing could be built. Anybody who chooses to do that is also going to discover that Summit did not exactly make a hell of a lot of money on this particular project. And if they saw a town board coming back and pressing them for additional funding, when we already know that they've lost money on this, that's not gonna sit well with any new company that we would be trying to convince to come in and build affordable housing. So I really feel like it's not just raking them over the coals, it's also sending a bad signal going forward.
Appreciate that.
So my opinion is that, I actually do think there should be a fence personally, because we don't know when we would actually get to construction. So I am concerned about that, and if Summit could put in their fence, that's great. However, what good is a fence if the ground is going to keep eroding and the fence could fall right into down the hill? So, I think this is an important project. It needs to move forward. I think we could get hung up on the fence, and I wouldn't want to get hung up on the fence. I walked the property the other day, and that erosion fence, there's sections where it's this close. And then there's another section where it's literally hanging off the side. And if we've moved that already, there's an area where it looks like it's 8 feet wide and the ground has literally fallen down. And so it's a problem that's creeping closer and closer and closer to those houses. So I would still pursue the fence, but I don't hear that we really have an appetite for that.
It's
already-
It's on the budget. That in the next few.
They are still doing that.
Yeah.
Super.
I think that's a given for all of us.
Okay.
And with signage.
Then I think that's great. I think that's important, but I think this project should be pursued because we can't even go for grants without a design. And $42,000 seems to me that's money well spent. Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second, we've had discussions. Anybody else? And thanks for that clarification. No, all right, let's vote.
And that motion passes unanimously.
Great. All right, okay. Do
Lori's here
we
now.
have Lori Barton to join us?
Lori is here. She is not able to join by camera, but she can by voice.
Okay, welcome, Lori.
Can you hear me? Can you hear
Yes,
me?
we can. Yes, can you hear us?
Okay, great.
Would you like to give us a presentation?
Sure. I actually don't know how up to date you are with the suicide postvention project. Is that something you know about and are familiar with, correct?
Yes, but I'm not sure that everybody is, and we do have some audience here. So if you could give us a recap, that would be great.
Sure. So, unfortunately, the town of Lyons, or our community, has had an incredibly high rate of suicide over the last year. In fact, it's about 1,500% of what would be expected in a community the size of Lyons. I understand that typically you would expect one death by suicide every 2 to 3 years, and the community has experienced 8 deaths in that way in the past year. So it's a pretty urgent problem. And the more if you know about suicides, there's things called contagions. It's important that the community get ahead of this and help the people who have been affected and figure out what's going on, why this is happening at such high levels, and what can we do to get in front of it and do everything we can to stop it.
Okay.
And so her request is in your packet.
Mhm.
It's for a $13,000 commitment to LEAF. I did hear tonight that the Lions Community Foundation has committed to $5,000 of the $18,000 LEAF needs to run this program.
That's fantastic.
Boulder County has committed $30,000 toward this program. And the IGA is ready once we have this discussion tonight. So Boulder County has money set aside for situations like this because suicide is on the increase. And they are willing to contribute if there was a local commitment as well. So between Lions Community Foundation, ourselves partnering with LEAF to provide this program, they will contribute the remaining amount is my understanding.
And that's $12,000.
15.
The county is committed to at least 30,000 based on the number of the total cost of the program being $60,000 over this next, I don't know how long, 6 months.
So LEAF's portion is $18,000. Godot, the organization that's doing the actual postvention and some of that mapping work, I think they're at 42,500. So they have sort of a short-term project in the community, and LEAF started the work back in December, and we'll continue it all year long and probably forever. Just in terms of the clinical and therapeutic services that we offer.
So I don't know much about this. I did attend that meeting at the library. It's the first I heard about it, and those two gentlemen spoke. I couldn't quite really figure out where they were from and who they were representing and actually what they were going to do. It was a bit confusing to me. So I have a couple of questions. What is the program? How did you find it? How did you compare it to other programs? And why did you end up eventually with this program? I mean, what actually are we really buying here? And from who?
Okay, so there are sort of two parallel programs that are happening here. The gentleman who spoke at the library at that first meeting, Vu and Beckett. Vu lives in Austin, Texas. Beckett lives in Boulder. And they are principals of the organization called Godot Communications. And LEAF did not identify Godot or these experts. There's someone that Mayor Rogan is familiar with. And so she reached out to them in the early days when it became apparent that there was a serious problem occurring. And so Godot Communications, and I don't want to speak in depth for them, but they had that meeting. They're going to have some more, I think he said, sort of suicide 101, just informational meetings. And then they will bring in some consultants who can do some mental health first aid or suicide prevention training among people in the community who want to be involved in that. So that is what Godot does. They're not clinicians, they're not therapists, but they do have broad experience supporting communities that are experiencing spikes in suicide. So concurrently, along with what Godot is doing, LEAF has two highly qualified local therapists who are trauma informed, have a great deal of training. And so LEAF will be doing all the therapeutic and clinical work. And we've already started that. We've already had a first group with the first responders, because that's a subset of the population that is struggling with this so much. We're scheduling a screening of the movie called The Paradise Paradox. If you've heard anything about that, it's Bodie Miller produced it, and it just addresses the suicide and mental health crises in these beautiful Colorado mountain towns like Lyons. So that's going to happen on March 7th, and we'll sort of begin a community conversation then. And we've got groups scheduled and individual therapy scheduled. So that is what this request is for. all of the therapeutic work that is required as we respond to this crisis.
Do you have any understanding of what other communities Godot has worked with, and how do they measure success? I mean, obviously you would like your suicide rate to be zero, but I mean, how did we do due diligence here?
Well, again, I don't feel qualified to speak to that because I didn't, Leaf wasn't involved in engaging with Godot. So that is something that happened before Leaf was brought in to partner with the community, and then again to provide all of the clinical and therapeutic services.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any questions?
I did attend that meeting as well, and I had the same issues I think that Trustee Edding had. I didn't feel like it was actually very clear or very well presented. That was a concern to me in terms of their major purpose was to educate the rest of us in how to deal with any kind of suicidal ideation that we faced. I did talk to one of those principals afterwards, felt much better about it after talking with them one-on-one, but still had thoughts of, it was, I mean, I love the turnout. I thought it showed a lot of community concern, and I pretty much loved everything the local folks said. But I just wasn't, it was like, so if Holly is in fact pretty acquainted with them, I might want to defer a decision on this until she's back and could tell us a little bit more about Godot. Again, in my conversation afterwards, I felt a good bit better, but still, I mean, my business is communication, and when you, if you didn't communicate clearly what your objectives are and how you're going to achieve them to a large group like that on its first meeting, that just makes me question how they're going to do that down the line. That's all.
Okay.
I mean, I think that $13,000 this is a great thing for that.
Trustee Williams, I really thank you for those comments. I didn't speak to him afterwards. I was confused during that meeting. I didn't walk away really getting this great feeling something good was going to happen here. But if you talked to him afterwards and you felt much better, then I'll go with that.
I definitely felt a bit better.
Okay, and so that makes me feel a lot
I
better.
talked with the gentleman from Weston.
Okay, okay, excellent. There's no way I would say no to this. I mean, how do you spend 200,000 chip sealing and then not 13,000 on this?
Right.
I did not know the situation is as difficult as it is right now. So obviously we'll support this. Let's make it work. That's all I gotta say.
No. Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify the 18,000 that Alliance Community Foundation just this evening committed 5,000, and then Leaf is requesting 13,000 from the town. That is for all of the clinical and therapeutic work that will be done for this need, pretty much in perpetuity. The 42,500 that is coming from Boulder County is really separate, and that is Godot's work.
Right.
That's helpful too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Lori. That is helpful because we know that our town participation will support 2 local clinicians who are doing a lot of important work. And, 8 suicides in 1 year are 8 too many. And trying to put a value on a life, trying to put a price on, we can't do that. And we have to do everything we can as a community to rally. And I agree with Trustee Williams and Trustee Edding. Several of us from the Board of Trustees were there that evening at the library. And I think we all felt a lot of, I think we were all encouraged by the turnout, by the number of people who showed up, who wanted to be involved, who wanted to become first responders. And I really love their idea of training people in mental health, first aid, people who are, interacting with the community on a regular basis. I was surprised, for example, by the idea of training bartenders, but it does make perfect sense. And they had some really good ideas. And I agree that maybe the communication wasn't executed very well. And maybe that's something they will work on in the future. We really hope so. I do defer to Mayor Rogan, who knows this communication team. I also know that she spent a lot of time trying to find funds to help pay for this price tag. So when I see a partnership here between Boulder County and the town of Lyons and LEAF and LCF, I feel like this is a real community effort. And this is a really small piece for us to pay, a really small part, especially when we're talking about lives at risk here. So I'm 150% for it.
So I'm
I'll
also,
say that, our team is also qualified and prepared to provide any of that mental health first aid or suicide prevention training. And we're ready to do that if the need is there, or if it's something that would support Godot or something in addition to Godot. And just, to tell you a story or two that matters. I mean, our therapists are already engaging with some family members who were left behind and some children of some of the people who died by suicide. And so, there's a lot of heartbreak out there, and we really don't want it to become a contagion that moves into the local youth. And that is always a possibility.
Trustee Olson?
so same thing. I agree. We should support this. I had a different view from attending that meeting.
Okay.
Sorry, this is personal to me.
Yeah.
I have some experience with it. With my father. And see, obviously, it's tough to deal with, even when you're older. Something happened to me when I was 20. Sorry.
Okay.
So luckily, my father survived. It changed everything, but there wasn't support for him. So I got the message from Godot that they're trying to build the support. So it may not be perfect. Maybe I looked at it from what I thought my father needed from it. So I think it's a great program. So I'm sorry, I don't usually talk about this.
Thank you for sharing.
So
I do have. Jocelyn. As a therapist, I don't think the general population understands or is aware of how much suicidal ideation exists within the general population. It is something we as therapists face on virtually a daily basis. And discerning where action needs to be taken and how the kind of action that needs to be taken is complex. And the most important thing is good referral to people who do have the capacity to know these things. The majority of suicides that take place are a particular age of male and are generally completed with firearms. But one thing I would want us to know is that increasingly we have one state that's passed laws, 2 additional states passing laws to not just stop youth, but to also stop transgender adults from being able to receive medical care. That segment of the population has a 41% suicide attempt rate, which is 6 times higher than any other diagnosis in the DSM-5. And then this is the most concerning statistic, is that transgender and non-binary teenagers have a 13 times higher suicide completion rate than their peers. So this is reaching epidemic proportions in the US. And towns the size of ours are more susceptible to it than many other types of locations. Small towns, rural towns, in depressed areas, it's even worse. And so I think anything we can do as a town, as agencies, organizations, therapists within this town, because I have had many a call. And as a pastor, I have conducted many a funeral for victims of suicide. It is far more pervasive and far more of a problem than we realize. So yeah, I absolutely believe providing these funds. I'm also concerned that we adequately educate first responders and all of us in public settings to know when to refer, when peer support is necessary, when local help is enough to provide help. So that's all.
Wow.
You know,
Well-
I'll just, a couple more things. The thing that I think
Sure.
is we're so fortunate is that our program director, Cherie Moreau, is a former first responder. And so that can be somewhat of a closed culture, but she has the ability to engage with that population because she speaks their language and just, I think automatically has earned their trust. And so, like I said, she's already had the first group with the first responders, and we're highly engaged with the first responder peer support who are local. And so, I think that's one thing that we've already started that's going well. And I'm not sure if the board is aware that Leaf actually is now has an official partnership with the school district. We're considered a trusted provider. And so you may know that we've been having art therapy groups in the middle school and high school. And next week we're starting at the elementary school. And so that's just another really important way for us to engage with kids and also their parents. And so hopefully identify concerns before they become a serious issue. We've got our tentacles everywhere.
I appreciate that. Lori, I have a question. Is there a contract? Because we haven't seen that, and I'm just wondering if that's something that we should see before we pass this resolution. I think everybody's in agreement for it and the importance and the need, but is that something that maybe actually Administrator Simonson or Attorney Dittman, can you answer that question?
Yeah,
Go
so
ahead, Attorney
there's going to be an IG. Basically, this is for direction, basically whether or not we want to pursue this, and if so, then there's going to be an IGA between us and Boulder County.
Okay.
For the funding. Victoria, that's my understanding. Is that right?
Well, yeah, so the county has funding for programs such as this. But they have to have a fiscal agent who's a peer municipality or within the county. So we would be the fiscal agent for the county's money to have Leaf. I haven't seen a contract with Godot. I think, Lori, do you have a contract with Godot?
We do not have a contract with Godot. Again, we're working concurrently and in collaboration, but not really doing the same thing. I do believe that a contract exists. Back when this started in December, I had a glance at it, but it doesn't really involve Leaf. It's sort of between Godot and whoever ends up funding their work.
I don't have that for tonight. I have seen an IGA with the county for us to be the fiscal agent for these funds. So it does feel still like there's some work to be done on that end. My question, Lori, is the funds that the town, we know they're to kind of supplement this program. Are you planning to do it either way? Provide, services?
Well, we can't not provide services. I appreciate the trustee for whom it is personal. I lost my only sibling in this way, and last year her only child in the same way. So I think those of us who have been affected by this, there's nothing we won't do to try to get ahead of it and to try to protect other families and people from experiencing this. So we won't not do it, but the extent to which we can do it would be greatly affected by having funding or not. Our therapists, a lot of their funding is grant, or their salaries is grant funded. And so they have very specific activities that they engage in based on that funding. So they're somewhat limited that way. It opens up more possibilities and more time if we can, specifically do these action items that I presented.
So perhaps the direction at this point should be to staff is that that we go forward with that we want to commit the $13,000 from the town, that we're going to ask Boulder County for the remaining. The Leaf is going to have the contribution, and then Boulder County will have the remaining, so that we are at 42,000.
Yes, well,
And
right
the-
now they're committed to 30.
Right, but
But
there's
they
an
said they
extra
would potentially contribute more if there was local
support.
contributions as well.
So do we need then to have that all tied up before we go to Boulder County for the remainder? 12,000?
I think maybe the way forward on this is that the board gives the direction tonight to bring it back as a resolution for ratification at the next meeting. And then
Okay.
only, I know the IGA is tied up with Boulder County. And so we're still waiting from Boulder County for their draft of the IGA. And then that'll probably be on approval for the next meeting, I would think, too. So that way we kind of put a bow on all of this, the approval of that resolution and the IGA.
And then who is the contract with?
Right.
Yeah, we need to do that.
Yeah, and
Okay.
then maybe Leaf
But
can
if the
provide some-
direction, it sounds to me we wholeheartedly support supporting Leaf with, to be able to provide some of the local services to continue this program.
Okay.
Okay, Lori,
Any
sounds
last-
like we'll be talking, but I will gear up a resolution for the next meeting.
Lori, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
being here this evening. This was really important to hear and to share.
Thank you for taking this at an awkward moment.
Thank you. Thank you for letting us do this work and for understanding just the real critical importance and all of the pain that has been poured into the situation so far.
All right, thank you. Okay, so now we can move on to trustee reports. Trustee Elson, do you have any?
Sure. So the EAB meeting was tonight, but it got pushed out. So nothing from the EAB. The EBC is meeting tomorrow morning, so nothing from the EBC. SFC met last week. It's actually it was a really good meeting. They're digging into a ton of stuff. So they're, let's see. So they're looking at waste hauling. So one of the women, I can't remember her name, that's on the commission works for Western.
Kathy Carroll.
Yes, disposal. And she said there's a new program coming out, I think by the end of 2026, that'll require haulers to also recycle and compost. And the recycling it's free if you take trash to them. So they're looking at that. So I was curious because right now some people get recycling, some do compost, and they pay for it. Like I don't, because I have the recycle center right downtown in town. So I was curious because she said a lot of those recycling centers could go away in the towns. So I'd ask, well, what's the overall cost increase for people? Because they said the benefit is the people that are paying for recycling now will have a reduced price. But people that are not paying for it could have an increased price. And also too, I guess it's also going to go into effect in less populated places. It's going to be a requirement there too. So I'm curious if that'll increase the price because across the board, the price is going to go up. So how much will that change? But that's one thing that they're looking at. Looking at, it's called trash equivalency, I think. Green resources. Yeah. One thing I want to highlight. So Emerson, the student that came to talk to us previously, he comes to every SFC meeting. So, but he always gives input. So it's good. He actually wants to come to the forum for the trustees to ask questions. He's asking what he could do to get questions. So, we discussed there's a program called VXC, which is for electric cars. I guess Colorado offers a $4,000 credit. If you can qualify, the VXC offers an additional $4,000 credit towards an electric car. So everyone came saying he purchased, I think it was a $16,000 electric car for $8,000 once everything's all said and done. Came up, Netherlands has a car share program. Did you bring that up, Ken? I remember correctly.
Not yet.
Not yet. So Netherlands has a car share program, so instead of giving out vouchers, they have an actual car that's available for residents if they need to go anywhere. It saves money because the car, and it's better for the environment because the car doesn't have to come from Longmont to come here. It's already in town. Just takes people where they need to go. So people looking at that. I think that was one more thing. So, the SFC is gonna send us a letter for the next meeting. Didn't come enough time for this meeting, but they would like us to look at signing a letter. Let me see what I did.
Dr. Cog emissions,
Yes.
decarbonization.
Yes, it's support of the climate pollution reduction implementation grant for decarbonization from Dr. Cog. And it's something, if we sign on to it, we can potentially get grants and money for it. That'll be coming in the next meeting. And because they would like us to approve it, but they know they cannot approve it and speak for us. So they're sending it to us. So that'll be coming for the next meeting. They need it for March 15th. Yeah, is that what it was?
It's before our next meeting.
For our next meeting. So we have time.
Yes.
Yes. So we'll do that. And one more thing, Lions High School, they won their senior Jaden Gardner. He took state as his
That's like
team.
champion.
Yes. It's his third or fourth time going. Every year he's come in second place. So it's a great.
That's awesome.
Yes. Got it.
Trustee Patty?
Great report. I love the friendship program. Okay, so I attended the Housing and Human Services Commission on February 12th. As far as Lions Valley townhomes are concerned, there were two two-bedroom units available as of that meeting. I don't know if that has been reduced or not. So very close to filling all 40 units. There are still 2 vacancies available for commissioners on the Housing and Human Services Commission. If anybody feels inclined or moved by Housing and Human Services. Kay, the chair, gave us an update from the Regional Housing Summit. She had also attended as well as staff here. We got an update on the last admin report. I know there's a lot of concern around homelessness. There's also a lot of concern around COVID relief dollars that are gone and needs being very high post-COVID. And I think there's a general concern from EFA and other organizations who support human services in the county that there just aren't enough donors to make up for that COVID funding when it's being so taxed. We talked about the Get Help Guide. I don't know if anybody is familiar with the Get Help Guide. It's a guide that kind of gathers all resources in the community. It was last published in 2021, and you can find it on the town's website. So we were talking about how can we best update that? How can we best share that? Should we maybe look at doing one-pagers for certain topics? We know that we'd like to make it user-friendly for seniors, especially. Lisa Ramsey talked about the emergency backpacks. I had brought one back from the Colorado Municipal League Conference 2 years ago. And so she was pricing out how much it would cost to equip each elderly person who is on her list. Basically, there's about 100 of them who could have this backpack by their front door in case of an emergency situation, whether it's a natural disaster or whatever happens, that they can just leave the house with it. It has all of their information, any, I guess, basic needs. And they're priced to be about $25 each. So we were talking about grants and sponsorship for about $2,500 to $3,000. And LCF might get tapped for that. Anyways, and then I really love this idea. Somebody brought up an idea, and Lori Barton's gone, darn it, about possibly moving the medical closet to Leaf's headquarters. So I think that's a really great idea. I think that'd be a great spot for it, central location. And they also talked about Leaf providing medicated assessment treatment, hopefully by the summer. I know they're working with a retired doctor in Boulder who would be the prescriber of such treatment. So that's the update. I know Kay and Megan are working on a survey for people with ADUs and businesses, trying to figure out short-term rentals and get a pulse on what the need is for local businesses and employees. So they're still working on the ADU and short-term rental subcommittee with the PCDC. That's all I've got.
All right,
Just
the
kidding.
UEB did meet February 7th. I'm meeting again tomorrow, which I believe is the 21st, right? Okay, we already went through the big news. Mean came back, and as of April 1st, 2024, we can sign the contract to go 100% green. Obviously, we passed that in the consent agenda. Just thought I'd mention it again. There was a long discussion about the Mean contract, or the contract we have with the town with Mean, switching to what they call the different schedule. I don't know if it's any relevant, because when you get into contracts with these guys, they last, what, 40 years or something, or 30 years, or
Some of them are very long.
so it's like, well, we'll all be dead by the time we can get into another contract. I don't know. So it's a long time away. They did talk a little bit about water shares. We continued to have that discussion. They remained silent as to, should we really acquire more shares? They kept saying it all depends on how much land to grow. And, only you guys can answer that, or if anybody can answer that. But we do have an offer out, right, on water shares?
Yeah, they haven't replied back, so the guess.
Okay, no reply.
No.
Okay.
We got that one today.
Right.
We have another one today that has 4 shares of Lake Mac for sale.
Okay, all right. And then the last thing was, should the fire department start paying for washing the fire trucks? 'Cause apparently they use the fire hydrants, and that basically goes against our fund. Because they don't have, that's not metered. No one puts a meter on a fire hydrant, right?
And we
And-
still have to pay for the water.
And so we have to pay for it. Basically, the fund pays for it. That discussion went on, Aaron, I forgot. What did we conclude? Did we crank down on the fire, or did we just ask them to wash a little bit less?
So one was to monitor it, and again, I think the issue is that town residents pay for that water
Yeah.
versus the entire fire protection district, who then gets the benefit of that. So potentially should that be in there? But there was some discussion of how much, what's it worth to do that? So the initial thought was we could ask them to use a hydrant meter that we use for construction contractors who purchase water, to at least look at how much water they use, and to try to get a yearly average in case that changes. Maybe they could use it 1 month each quarter or 4 times a year, and we could at least see how much water they potentially use from that, so we have a better understanding just of that volume of water used. And then at that point, to rediscuss if it was worth trying to pursue actual charges.
Yeah, at least I think everybody concluded if they're being metered, they'll probably at least be more thoughtful about it. So, all right.
Trustee Bender?
So Parks and Rec, they did meet. It was a short meeting. And the main thing out of that is that they're looking for, trying to finalize a date for river cleanup in either late March or early April. That's it.
HPC meets tomorrow night. That's it.
Okay. PCDC last week, we talked about, the moratorium currently that Boulder County has in place on commercial businesses within our planning area. And, I think that their planning commission tomorrow is going to be discussing that along with, and I might speak this incorrectly, so correct me if necessary. That commercial properties could turn into ag if there's a change in use on those commercial properties. And the PCDC on Monday made a recommendation for us to discuss at some point. So I'm asking this to put it on the future agenda, I guess. So that when tomorrow their planning commission is meeting on this, so we won't have a statement in front of them by tomorrow. However, if we could bring it up in time to have a clear statement of where we stand on this issue, because it affects Lions very particularly, for Mayor Rogan to read to the county commissioners and their decision-making on that. So, timing, I think there's some dates that are still unknown a little bit or not clear. We did get it today. Well, is that a possibility to get that onto the next
Yes.
agenda?
It is.
Okay.
Let me find that one here.
Well, that's basically all that I had, is that the PCDC made a statement. I'm not gonna read it right this evening because it could go into the agenda item.
I think part of that is that that was a workshop
Yes,
and you can't really make a formal recommendation by your board without it being a meeting. So the timing on this, at one of our previous IGA meetings, we did make the county aware that when we're on the regular referral list, 14 days isn't enough for it to get to both our planning commission and to you always, if there's, timing wise. So that we, need a little more time on this. And so the mayor, I heard from, Kim Sanchez with the county, who said that the Board of County Commissioners hearing on this issue has been scheduled for March 7th. If you would like comments from the town to be included in the packet, we need it 1 week in advance. So again, that's not going to work in timing for tonight. They need it by February 28th. Otherwise, we can just present during their public hearing on this issue that night.
which again is when, March
7th
the 7th, that's just a Thursday,
is Board of County Commissioners.
right?
Their planning commission is, tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Online for tomorrow, February 21st. So I reached out to Mayor Rogan today and asked her if she was planning to attend that via her, being out of town. And she said she was not planning to, since you guys haven't taken a stance on that. So, and to put it on the next agenda.
So if it's on March the 4th, then perhaps
We can present it,
We
it
can
won't make it
present it
into their packet.
on the
this time.
6th, it just won't be on the packet.
Mhm. But it would give the planning commission time to have an actual meeting and make a recommendation.
Make it more formal,
Mhm.
okay?
Yeah.
Because that could take place at their Monday meeting on the 26th,
Yes.
this next week, okay? Is
There's
that
also-
something,
There's also room on the, a workshop agenda if we want to spend a little time on it at your next meeting instead of all of it during general business.
Yeah, yeah.
You like that?
Yeah.
Okay. I can pass it along to the mayor. We'll be setting the formal agenda here.
so administrators, I'm,
Mhm.
yeah, saying so.
Yeah.
Will you be giving direction to the PCDC to make that agenda, item
I can certainly do that.
on the 26th?
I can ask the staff to put it on. I think you guys do it as a group, don't you?
Well, it's already been done. We did that last Tuesday.
Okay, yes, I can certainly ask.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Is there anything else that anybody wants to add? If not, then summary of actions, please.
Okay, I thought, staff is to follow up on handicap accessibility to library. Ordinance 1157 passed on second reading. The direction was to move forward with the LEAP funding and draft a resolution to be ratified at the next meeting. Future agenda item to have a clear statement on Boulder County's zoning moratorium. Also a potential workshop on the Boulder County zoning moratorium. And staff is to direct PCDC to add the Boulder County zoning moratorium as an agenda item for their 2/26 meeting. Did I miss anything?
Nope, Attorney Pittman, you're good?
Nothing for me.
Okay, great. In that case, what do we do? We move to adjourn?
And a motion.
A motion to adjourn. So moved. Second?
I say.
All right, all in favor?
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Good night.